Daniel Reed pressed his face against the transport window and watched the massive structure grow larger. Galactic Academy Station Helix. 7. Looked like a spinning wheel made of metal and glass floating in the darkness of space. His stomach twisted with nerves. 3 months of language, training and cultural classes hadn't prepared him for this moment. The transport docked with a soft thud. Daniel grabbed his single bag and followed the other passengers into the arrival bay. They were all aliens. Tall ones, short ones, some with scales and others with fur. A few had extra arms. One looked like a floating jellyfish inside a water tank on wheels. None of them looked at him. They all moved away when he got too close. A grey-skinned alien with a ridge running down his head waited at the gate. His yellow eyes studied Daniel with obvious doubt. "You are the human," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." Daniel Reed from Earth. "I am Warden Tulos. Follow me." The alien turned and walked away without waiting. Daniel hurried after him through corridors filled with strange students. Some whispered when they saw him. Others simply stared. A group of furry aliens actually crossed to the other side of the hallway to avoid passing near him. Daniel felt his face get hot. He was used to being the new kid, but this was different. Here he was the new species. "Your quarters are in Section 7, Tulo said without looking back. "Classes begin tomorrow. You will attend standard curriculum with other first-year students. Try not to cause problems." "I won't cause any problems, sir." Tulo stopped and turned around. His yellow eyes narrowed. "Your planet is classified as a death world. Your species evolved as persistence hunters. You come from a place where almost everything is poison or predator. The other students fear you, and they have good reason. Stay out of trouble." Daniel wanted to argue, but kept quiet. He had heard this speech before in different words. Humans were dangerous. Humans were scary. Humans came from a planet that would kill most other species in days. It didn't matter that Daniel had never hurt anyone in his life. It didn't matter that he liked animals and helped his little sister with homework. He was human, so he was a threat. His room was small but clean. 1 bed, 1 desk, 1 window, looking out at the stars. Daniel dropped his bag and sat on the bed. The mattress was too hard and smelled strange. He pulled out his phone and looked at the last picture his family sent. His mom, dad, and little sister, Amy, all smiling at the camera. Amy had written, "Come back soon," on a piece of paper she held up. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. The next morning, Daniel found his first class after getting lost twice. The other students were already sitting down when he entered. Every head turned to look at him. The room went silent. Daniel saw an empty seat in the back and walked toward it. The alien student sitting next to it immediately grabbed her bag and moved to a different desk. Professor Harv was a tall being with 4 arms and skin that changed colors. He taught xenobiology, the study of alien life forms. Daniel tried to focus on the lesson, but he kept noticing how the other students glanced at him nervously. During group work, nobody wanted to be his partner. He ended up working alone. Lunch was worse. The cafeteria was huge and loud, filled with hundreds of students from dozens of worlds. Daniel got his food from a machine that asked what kind of biology he had, and then produced something that looked almost like a sandwich. He stood with his tray looking for somewhere to sit. Every table he approached suddenly became full. Students turned their backs or pretended not to see him. He finally sat alone at a table in the corner. The food tasted like cardboard, but he ate it anyway. A female alien with orange fur and large eyes sat down 3 tables away. She kept glancing at him while talking to her friends. Daniel heard the word human several times. They were definitely talking about him. After lunch, Daniel had time before his next class. He decided to explore the station. Most areas were off limits to first-year students, but the observation decks were open. He took a lift to level 12 and walked out onto a platform with a clear dome overhead. Space stretched out in every direction, filled with stars and distant nebulas. For a moment, Daniel forgot about being lonely. Beautiful, isn't it? Daniel turned around. The orange-furred alien from the cafeteria stood a few feet away. Up close, he could see she had white stripes on her arms and her eyes were bright green. "Yeah," Daniel said carefully. "It is. I am Nia, she said. I should apologize. At lunch, I was talking about you with my friends. It was rude. It's okay. Everyone's been doing it all day. Nera's ears flattened against her head. We have heard stories about humans. About your world. They say your planet has storms that can level cities and animals that hunt in packs. They say humans can run for hours without stopping and track prey across continents. I can barely run a mile, Daniel said with a weak smile. And the most dangerous thing I ever tracked was my cat when she got out of the house. Nera tilted her head. What is a cat? It's a small furry animal. We keep them as pets, companions. You keep predators in your home? Nera's eyes went wide. Well, they're not really dangerous. They're soft and they purr when you pet them. Nera looked confused. Your species domesticated a hunter and keeps it for emotional comfort. Daniel hadn't thought about it that way. I guess so. Yeah, that is very strange, Nera said slowly. But maybe not in a bad way. She was quiet for a moment. I have class now. Perhaps I will see you again, Daniel from Earth. She left before he could respond. Daniel watched her go, feeling slightly less alone than before. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was something, a start. That evening, Daniel attended his last class of the day. Professor Harv was lecturing about the station's research facilities. In the lower levels, we maintain containment areas for various species, he explained. Some are dangerous collected for study. Ravenclaws from Thornwald, crystal serpents from the Andia system, shadow hunters from the dark moons. These creatures help us understand predator behavior across the galaxy. Daniel felt uncomfortable. Keeping animals locked up for study didn't seem right. But he kept his opinion to himself. He was already enough of an outsider. After class, he returned to his small room and called home. His mom answered with a huge smile. How was your first day, honey? It was okay, Daniel lied. Just getting used to everything. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. When the call ended, Daniel felt even more homesick. He lay on his too-hard bed and stared at the ceiling. 3 years. He had 3 years at this academy before he could go home. 3 years of being the scary human that everyone avoided. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, unaware that everything was about to change. 2 weeks had passed since Daniel arrived at the academy. Life had settled into a lonely routine. Classes, meals alone, studying in his room. Nera sometimes nodded at him in the hallways, but they hadn't spoken again. Daniel told himself he was fine with it, even though he wasn't. Today felt different from the moment he woke up. Something in the air seemed wrong. Daniel got dressed and headed to his morning xenobiology class. The corridors were more crowded than usual, with students clustered, in small groups talking in worried voices. Did you hear about the maintenance issues? They say the containment systems have been glitching. My brother works in security. He says it's worse than they're admitting. Daniel slipped past them and entered the classroom. Professor Harv looked tired. His skin kept shifting between grey and pale blue, which Daniel had learned meant stress. Today we will discuss the Ravenclaw species. Harv began. Native to the forest world of Thornwald. They are apex predators with no natural enemies. 8 limbs, 4 for movement and 4 for grasping. Highly intelligent pack hunters. Adult females can weigh up to 400 pounds. They have never been successfully domesticated or trained. A hologram appeared above Harv's desk, showing a creature that made Daniel's breath catch. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a panther, but with extra legs and a longer body. Its fur was dark with silver markings. The eyes were too intelligent, too aware. Even in hologram form, it looked deadly. We have 3 specimens in the research levels, Halbeck continued. An adult female and her 2 cubs. They were acquired 6 months ago for behavioral study. A student with blue skin raised one of her 3 hands. Isn't it dangerous to keep them here? The containment systems are advanced, Harv said, but his skin flickered darker. Multiple redundancies ensure safety. Daniel thought about those creatures locked in cages below. The mother separated from her cubs. Or maybe all 3 trapped together in a too small space. It made him angry in a way he couldn't quite explain. The class ended and students filed out. Daniel was gathering his things when the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steady again. A low hum filled the air, different from the normal station sounds. Attention all personnel. The announcement came from speakers in the ceiling. Security Chief Vaughan's voice was calm but firm. We are experiencing technical difficulties in the research sector. All students proceed to your dormitories and remain there until further notice. This is not a drill. The hallway erupted in chaos. Students pushed and shoved trying to get to the lifts. Daniel got caught in the crowd swept along with them. The lights flickered again and this time they went red. Emergency lighting. Containment breach in Sector 9. Bourne's voice had changed sharp with urgency now. All security teams respond. Students, find the nearest safe room immediately. Do not, I repeat, do not attempt to reach your dormitories. The crowd panicked. Aliens scattered in every direction. Screaming in languages Daniel didn't understand. He saw Nera being pushed against a wall by larger students. Without thinking, he pushed through and pulled her away from the crush. This way, he shouted over the noise. They ran together down a side corridor, away from the worst of the crowd. Behind them, Daniel heard something that made his blood go cold. A roar deep and primal echoing through the ventilation system. Then crashing sounds, metal tearing. What was that? Nera's voice shook. I think something got out. They turned a corner and nearly ran into Professor Harve. His skin was pure white with fear. The Ravenclaws, he gasped. The female broke out. She killed 2 guards. Get to safety now. More roars echoed through the station, but these were different. Higher pitched, younger. The Cubs, Daniel said. Forget the Cubs, Alvec snapped. Save yourselves. He ran past them, his forearms pumping. Nera grabbed Daniel's sleeve. We need to hide. You go, Daniel said. I'm going to check something. Are you insane? There's a 400-pound predator loose. The Cubs sounded scared. What if they got left behind in the evacuation? Nera stared at him. They are dangerous animals. They are babies. Scared babies. Daniel pulled away from her grip. Go find a safe room. I'll be fine. He ran before she could argue, heading deeper into the station instead of toward safety. The red emergency lights made everything look like a nightmare. Daniel passed abandoned equipment and opened doorways. Once he heard heavy footsteps above him in the ceiling crawl spaces. Something big was moving up there. The research sector was a disaster. Doors hung open, sparking wires dangling from ceiling panels. Daniel saw claw marks gouged into the metal walls. He followed the sounds of whimpering to a laboratory with xenobiology. Research 7 printed on the door. Inside the room was a mess. Overturned tables shattered glass papers everywhere. And in the corner, huddled behind an overturned cabinet were 2 small shapes. The Ravenclaw cubs were much smaller than their mother, maybe 30 pounds each. Their dark fur was matted with something Daniel hoped wasn't blood. One had a cut on its leg. They made sounds that were almost like crying as they pressed against each other. When they saw Daniel, they bared their teeth and hissed. 4 eyes, too many teeth, claws that looked very sharp. But Daniel saw past that. He saw terrified children who had been left behind. It's okay, he said softly, crouching down to make himself smaller. I'm not going to hurt you. The cubs didn't believe him. They hissed louder, trying to make themselves look bigger. Daniel sat down on the floor several feet away from them. He moved slowly, keeping his hands visible. His dad had taught him this when dealing with scared animals on their farm. You're hurt, he said to the one with the cut leg. That looks like it stings. Time passed. Daniel didn't move closer, didn't make sudden gestures. He just sat and talked quietly about nothing important. About his sister Amy and her collection of stuffed animals. About his dog back home named Copper. About missing his mom's cooking. Eventually, the cubs stopped hissing. Their ears, which had been flat against their head, slowly rose. The uninjured one took a tentative step forward. Daniel stayed still. Another step. Then another. The cub sniffed at his hand. Its nose was cold and wet, just like a dog's. After a moment, it didn't pull away. There we go. Daniel whispered. See, I'm not scary. The other cub, the injured one, made a soft sound. Not a hiss this time, but something else, almost questioning. Yeah, I see you, too, Daniel said. Let me look at that leg. Okay. He spent the next few minutes gaining their trust, moving inch by inch closer, letting them smell him. touch him with their strange paws. Finally, he was able to examine the injured cub's leg. The cut wasn't deep, but it needed cleaning. Daniel found a first aid kit on the wall. The instructions were in 3 languages, but the pictures were clear enough. He cleaned the wound while the cub squirmed. Its sibling watched closely, growling protectively. I know, Daniel murmured. But infection is worse than a little sting. When he finished, both cubs seemed calmer. Daniel found emergency rations in a cabinet and offered them some. They ate hungrily, making satisfied sounds between bites. Somewhere in the distance, Metal shrieked. The mother was still hunting through the station. Still searching. She's looking for you, Daniel realized. You're what she wants. The cubs pressed against him, one on each side. They were warm and solid, and they smelled like wet fur and something spicy he couldn't identify. Daniel put his arms around them carefully, ready to pull back if they objected. They didn't. Instead, they settled closer. What am I doing? Daniel asked himself. He was sitting in an abandoned lab, hugging 2 alien predator cubs while their mother tore through the station. This was insane, but he couldn't leave them. Wouldn't leave them. We need to find somewhere safer, he told the cubs. Can you walk? The injured one limped but could move. Daniel led them deeper into the research sector away from the main corridors. He found a small storage room with a door that's still locked. Inside were supplies, shelves of equipment, and enough space for the 3 of them. Daniel secured the door and made a nest of lab coats and emergency blankets in the corner. The cubs curled up immediately, exhausted. Within minutes, they were asleep, their sides rising and falling. Daniel sat with his back against the wall, watching them. His heart was pounding. He had hidden himself and 2 dangerous predators from security. From the academy, from everyone. If anyone found them, he would be in massive trouble. They might even send him back to Earth. But looking at the sleeping cubs, Daniel couldn't make himself regret it. They had needed help and no one else had stopped to give it. Outside, the mother's roars grew louder. Hours passed in the small storage room. Daniel dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. The cubs slept deeply, occasionally twitching in their dreams. The injured one had stopped limping, which was a good sign. Daniel checked the bandage twice to make sure it was holding. Around what he guessed was evening, the cubs woke up hungry. They made soft chirping sounds and pawed at Daniel's legs. He dug through the storage cabinets until he found more emergency rations. The packaging said they were nutritionally balanced for carnivorous species. He hoped that was close enough. The cubs ate eagerly, their small, sharp teeth making quick work of the dense food bars. When they finished, they looked at Daniel expectantly. He laughed despite their situation. Sorry, that's all for now. We need to make it last. One of the cubs, the uninjured one, bumped its head against Daniel's hand. He scratched behind its ears, and it made a rumbling sound deep in its chest, almost like a purr. The other cub wanted attention, too, pushing its way under Daniel's other hand. You guys need names, Daniel said softly. Can't just keep thinking of you as the cubs. He looked at them carefully. The injured one had brighter silver markings on its face. You can be Kira, he said, touching its head. The other had darker coloring overall. And your Lex. The cubs didn't care what he called them. They just wanted more scratches. Through the walls, Daniel heard boots running past. Security teams were still sweeping the sector. He heard Vaughn's voice giving orders, but couldn't make out the words. The cubs' ears pricked up at the sounds, and they pressed closer to Daniel. It's okay, he whispered. I won't let them take you. But what was his plan? He couldn't hide here forever. Eventually, someone would find them. And what about the mother? She was still out there, still searching. Daniel had heard her roars 3 more times, each one sounding more desperate. The cubs were her children. She had probably been captured while trying to protect them. Taken from her home world, locked in a cage. Separated from everything she knew. And now her babies were missing. Daniel couldn't imagine the fear and rage she must be feeling. We need to find her, he told the cubs. We need to get you back to your mom. Kira tilted her head and Daniel could swear she understood. Maybe not the words, but the intent behind them. The next few hours were tense. Daniel listened at the door, trying to figure out when the corridors were clear. The cubs napped on and off, conserving energy. Around midnight, by Daniel's estimate, things finally got quiet. No more running boots. No more shouted orders. He cracked the door open and peered out. The emergency lights were still on, bathing everything in red. The corridor was empty. "Come on," Daniel whispered to the cubs. "Stay close." They followed him out, moving on silent paws. Daniel was surprised at how quietly they could move when they wanted to. He led them through the research sector, trying to remember the station layout from his student orientation. The ventilation system ran through the whole station. If the mother was using it to move around unseen, maybe he could use it to find her. Daniel found an access panel and pried it open. Cold air rushed out, carrying strange scents. The cubs immediately got excited, their noses working. They smelled something. "Is it her?" Daniel asked. "Can you smell your mom?" Lex pushed past him and jumped into the ventilation shaft. Kira followed immediately. Daniel had no choice but to climb in after them. The metal shaft was cramped and cold. He had to crawl on his hands and knees, following the cubs as they navigated the maze of passages. They climbed up, then across, then down. Daniel lost all sense of direction.